Welcome back to The Heat as we continue our discussion on the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Tony, let me start with you this time. You pointed out just a moment ago that there are NATO assets on the borders of Russia which have been deployed there. Last year we had a NATO summit in Wales in which governments agreed to create a rapid reaction force for Eastern Europe. Whatever happened to that?
Well, I think it was a good idea that went the way of so many other good ideas. I don't think there's been much in the way of follow-through. I agree with your guest stipulating the fact that most of the Europeans do not want to go down a militarized path on this. And I understand that, I do. With that said, though, I think our indications, the United States, is that there's a real desire by the Russians, by Putin, to reinsinuate the boundaries or at least the influence of the old Russian Empire, the old Soviet Union. So I think this is where there's a give and take. We do have an interest as the United States to be a good NATO partner. With that said, I think we're much better off with a vibrant, functioning Russia that is focusing far more on economic competition rather than military involvement in its neighbors. And I think this is where, and I'm going to speak very bluntly on this, the Pentagon is debating on what to do. We do have options, none of them good, regarding posturing. One of the things I've said we should do, I participated back in 1985 in something called Reforger, Return of Forces to Germany, just to make it clear that, you know, hey, Russia, you do have the right to have your influence, but we, the United States, still back our European allies as much as we can. And I think that's what we're kind of in this twilight zone right now between the two.
Alexander, what are your views on that? Is this the Russian intention to restore the borders that existed when the Soviet Union was still in existence?
It might be somewhere in the back of Vladimir
Sorry, Eric. Eric, I just want to go to Alexander for a moment, and then I'll come to you.
Excuse me. I thought you were talking to me.
No, that's fine. Alexander?
Well, first of all, Russia has no intentions like that, and I think Putin and other leaders have stressed that many times. I think that the problem that we are witnessing at the moment, and I think it was obvious at the G7 summit, is that America is trying to put words into Europe's mouth and saying, you know, we are all standing together, we should put pressure on Russia. That is not the case. The Europeans are now suffering. Germany economy is suffering, British economy is suffering, French economy is suffering, and so on. And of course, the Europeans are towing the line, but very reluctantly. And the G7 body language showed us that it was G1 plus G6 summit rather than the G7 summit. But another thing is that what I find quite disturbing and actually distasteful is when we hear Western politicians and experts saying, oh, yes, but we have nothing against Russian people. Oh, but we want Russia to prosper and be a partner. And so, I'm sorry, no, that's not the case anymore. When America and the West and their allies are sending ammunition and arms, and they are sending arms through private contractors and so on to Ukraine, and with these arms and that armor, ethnic Russians are killed. This, gentlemen, is a proxy war. And you can stop telling us how you wish that Russia would become prosperous and peaceful and a wonderful partner. This is aggression against Russia, by the way.
All right, let me go.
And stop telling that Russia is an aggressor.
All right, let me go to Ivana. Ivana, go ahead.
Russia has never been a good partner. Look, this year we're going to celebrate 15th anniversary of Transnistria. We witness South Ossetia, we witness Abkhazia. Ukraine is one of the largest European nations. Of course, it's standing up to its fundamental rights and the right to defend itself that actually is written down in the United Nations Charter. This is not, Russia would like us to think that it has been a good partner. Russia has always been misbehaving. Russia has always been meddling with its neighbors' affairs. It's not about, the second point, it's not about Russia versus United States. That's what Russia would like us to believe. It's actually about the nation of 45 million people and one of the biggest countries in Europe. Actually, and its people wanting to have the rule of law, justice, and be part of the European family, and because they share these similar values. It's not about the United States versus Russia. It's not about bipolar world. This is about the basic rights that we actually built in after the World War II. And Russian Federation has been very hypocritical, and Mr. Nekrasov knows this very well. This is false. This is actually Russia is sending its forces. We have international bodies, international like OSCE, and monitoring there and informing us that the Russia sends its military equipment.
Eric, I want to get back to a question I posed earlier on, and that is what motivates Russia? Why is Russia involved in Ukraine right now? Is it the intention to restore the Soviet Empire? Is it strategic? What is it?
Well, it's Russia's intention to restore its strategic imperatives, its geopolitical rights, if you want to call it that. I mean, I've been writing for the last couple of years that any NATO move, any Western move into Ukraine is going to be hitting Russia in its most sensitive spot. There are people in Washington, the neoconservatives, who want to see Russia torn apart. The Russians cannot tolerate, from a simple military point of view, of having NATO bases in Ukraine. They can't tolerate having NATO forces just off their coast of the Black Sea and NATO planes flying again over their borders. Look at Crimea. Was part of Russia for more than 200 years until Nikita Khrushchev, in a drunken banquet, gave it to Ukraine as a present. But I've been to Crimea.
It was illegal. It was a legal transaction.
It was a drunken party gift. It was, and I've been there.
It wasn't a gift.
The people there, Crimea is as much a part of Ukraine as Russia, as Houston is of the United States.
Right. I want to go. Okay, Eric, I want to go to Alexander very quickly. Sorry, Ivana, I just want to get Alexander's response to this. We're running out of time right now. Alexander, President Putin recently told an Italian newspaper during an interview that Russia is not a threat to the West. He said there's no need to be afraid of Russia, yet many in the West, of course, do not believe this. Is that ever going to change?
I don't think it will change soon, because the propaganda campaign in the West is so strong at the moment, anti-Russian propaganda, that people are being told things that are, basically lies. And it's very difficult in this environment to say anything, because Putin says something and immediately 20,000 newspapers say that he's, lying and so on. I think that the only way out of this situation is for the Kyiv government to talk to the East. There's no other way. If they don't start doing this, then nothing will happen. This conflict will just go on and on.
All right, Tony, very quickly, I've got 10 seconds.
Well, I think the diplomatic solution is what we all seek. But let me say, if NATO bullets are given to Ukrainians and they kill Russians on Ukrainian soil, that's the Russians' problem. That's not Ukraine's problem.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. That's all we have time for, but the conversation continues. You can, of course, always chat with us on Twitter at cctv_America, or send us your comments to theheat@cctv-america.com. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.